A good background going on here. Let me find something. So it's pretty early, but we try to do these videos when I have time available before I start my day, and while the brain's still working on a good level. So today we're going to talk about tools, and it's a very common subject for new owner operators to ask about. What tools do I need? And I will say that the newer your truck is, the less tools you're going to need. The older the truck, the more tools you'll need. So let's just say for example, you purchase a truck and it's got 400,000 miles. And say, here we are in year 2025. So let's say you got a 2021 model year truck. Probably still has the Daimler extended warranty. So the warranty, if you're in good shape with that, the manufacturer's warranty will carry you all the way up to 750,000 miles. I highly recommend that warranty, by the way. That's an outstanding warranty. So, from a warranty standpoint, you're not going to do a lot of repairs on your own because a lot of the engine components and the entire after treatment system is covered under warranty. Now, you'll see some older owner operators who've been owner operators for a while have a decent amount of tools because they probably had an older truck, and when the EPA systems came out, they would break down all the time. Roadside breakdowns all the time. The after treatment system, you had the EGR. EGR was a big one. It was terrible, absolutely terrible. It was a nightmare. Unless you enjoy that kind of thing, you enjoy being broke down on the side of the road. Um, but as the companies purchase newer and newer trucks, the newer and newer trucks filter down to the owner operators, and they got newer and newer equipment. And then with the Cascadia 126 model, it's really when Daimler came out with a better warranty, and part of that was required by law as well. The new PA requirements required tamper-proof emission control systems, and as a consequence, they want you to take your truck to the dealership. They don't want you leading your one box or your EGR system, for example. So, as the trucks became better, there's less need to have tools. But let's just talk about some basic tools. If I was a brand new owner operator and I had a Cascadia 126 model, say a 2020 or 2021, maybe a 2022, here's what I would carry as a bare minimum. I would carry some wrenches, not a complete wrench set, so because odds are you're not going to need a lot of these things. With Love's, got their garages and they do more training on their mechanics nowadays. You got Love's, you got TA, you got Southern Tire Mart. You can, if you need a basic mechanical stuff, you can always go to one of those guys. But let's just say you want to have a minimum of some wrenches. Well, I would say I would carry as a minimum a 7/16, a half inch, 9 3/8, 9/16. That's it. And then for metric, I would go 10 millimeter, 11 millimeter, 12 millimeter. That's it. You get into the bigger size of bolts, then those are really frame components, and you're probably going to need an impact wrench. And not you, but a mechanic would need an impact wrench to remove some of those heavier duty bolts. So you don't need to carry a complete metric set or a complete, standard set. Just carry the most common sizes, and then carry the socket size along with that. So then you want to have a ratchet and a small extension for that as well. I would carry a Torx bit set, from like a T15 all the way up to maybe a T50. They come in little sets, and I'll put some links in the description where we're done. So Torx fasteners are very, very common, and especially the little black screws inside your cab. Those are like T20s or T25s. They're very, very common. Um, it's just one of those things where as you learn and develop technical skills, you may want to add to your tool set. Other basic things that I would carry is standard screwdrivers, just a couple of them. Uh, not too many tools initially. What you'll find is you'll carry specific tools for specific things with your truck. Like if your truck has a diesel powered APU, like a Thermal King diesel powered APU, you'll start carrying tools just for your APU. So those are something to keep in mind. But I wouldn't go crazy on tools. It used to be older, the older Cascadia 125 models. You damn near had to be a mechanic to keep those things on the road. They were just breaking down all the time and no warranty, not warranted worth it, and anything. But the newer trucks, they don't need. They're built better. They have a warranty, and it really, really helps on the bottom line. Really helps with your profitability that you don't have to work so hard to keep these trucks on the road. Uh, you know, there are certain things you want to think about with tools, especially like power tools. And let me just say this before you start buying tools. Buying tools is addictive. It's a habit. Uh, you start entering this wonderful world of buying tools and you can't stop. And it's why I like Milwaukee, because they're a highly innovative company. They have a lot of power tools. They're into, they're into automotive and they're into carpentry, of course, but they come out with a lot of innovation. So every couple of years they'll come out with newer, better designs for their power tools. But whatever company you choose, stick with the same company if you're using power tools. And the reason for it is because of the batteries. So if you like DeWalt, then buy DeWalt tools. Then all the batteries that you buy for your DeWalt tools is going to be compatible with all your other DeWalt tools. Same thing with Milwaukee. If you start buying a Milwaukee drill, a Milwaukee impact wrench, a Milwaukee leaf blower, then you want to stay with Milwaukee because all the battery systems are going to be compatible, with all your Milwaukee tools. Some guys like rigid tools. There's nothing wrong with that. Rigid's a very good brand. Some guys, like the American made tools. They like that, that they don't want to carry, tools made from foreign countries. And I understand that too. Milwaukee's global. They're made everywhere. They make some tools. Some Milwaukee tools are made in the U.S. Some are made in Hong Kong, and some their pack out systems, which are very popular and I highly recommend, are made in Israel. So they're global. They're all over the place. Um, there's nothing wrong with buying inexpensive tools. Um, Stanley or Craftsman, even Walmart tools. It's perfectly fine. There's a saying out there in the mechanics world that the tools don't make the wizard. The wizard can make any tool work. So if you have good mechanical skill sets, no matter what company made the screwdriver, make that screwdriver work. But it's something like don't get too hung up on high quality tools. And a lot of times you find in a truck stop, you go out for a walk, you'll find tools on the ground all the time. You just hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches, whatever. That's pretty common. So even if you did buy expensive tools, you may end up losing them. I find mechanic tools inside of my engine compartment all the time. So whenever a mechanic's done working on my truck, I inspect their work and I'll find they left me some tools. I don't keep the tools. I take it back to the mechanic, say, here's your tools. But there's nothing wrong with buying inexpensive tools. Um, you could buy tools from Harbor Freight very cheaply. You could buy tools off of eBay, for example, that could be 25 to 50% off. They're used tools, but that will save you money. And tools can get very, very expensive. You could buy tools on Facebook Marketplace. You could buy tools from yard sales and flea markets. So you could buy tools everywhere. It's so you're only going to carry specific tools for your truck because the more tools you bring, it's adding weight. The more weight you have in your truck, it's going to lower your fuel mileage, and it's going to take up space, and you may never use it. So I have a large tool inventory at home, but then I only bring certain tools with me on the road. So that works out pretty good. The other thing is, when you're going to go buy tools, pay attention to holiday sales, because you always have big sales events around all the major holidays, whether it's Labor Day, Memorial Day, Easter, 4th of July sale. You could get 20% off your tools. So if you got your eye on, that Milwaukee power tool, then, if you're trying to save money, which I recommend, um, then you could put it on your list of things you want to buy, and then wait for it to go on sale, and then buy it. It's like I had my eye on that. Home Depot comes out with sales all the time, and then a lot of times they'll buy a complete set of Milwaukee tools. They'll bundle them together and put it on sale. Sweet. Sweet. It's addictive too. You gotta watch out for that addictive part, because the other joke about tools is it's better than buying drugs and spending it on fast women. So so it's like, well, it's a good habit to have, because you can spend your money on worse things than spending it on tools. Let's talk about diagnostic tools. Because it used to be very common for owner operators to have diagnostic tools. And I have a laptop that I bought from Diesel Laptops, but I bought it several years ago, and I had an older truck, and it broke down all the time, and it threw codes all the time, and I needed a diagnostic tool. And when those older Cascadia 125 models broke down, they didn't really tell you what the code was. They just say, "Well, you got a fault code." It's like, "Well, that's great. What is it?" They're like, "I don't know." The new trucks tell you what it is. And more and more drivers are posting on YouTube and Facebook and other places, uh, what the fault codes are, how to troubleshoot, and how to resolve it. So I'll give you an example. I'll put a link in my description of a couple fault codes that I created videos for. So a lot of times you get fault code information straight from your dash readout, which is it's awesome. It's totally awesome. And more than likely it's going to be under warranty. So you don't want any tools, because you don't want to touch it. If it's under warranty, don't touch it. Take it to the nearest Freightliner dealer or Detroit diesel repair shop and have it covered under warranty. Even Love's and TA. I don't know about Pilot, but these guys are getting more and more training on diagnostics, and they're offering diagnostic services. Sometimes they'll do it automatically when you go in for an oil change or a chassis lube. They'll run a diagnostic on your truck for free. I'm like, okay, well, I really didn't need that, but they're doing it as a complimentary service. So if you have a fault code and you don't know what it is, you can pull into any Love's or TA, and they'll throw their own diagnostic hardware software on there and tell you what it is. Maybe they could fix it, maybe they can't. Odds are they probably can't, but they'll tell you what it is. So you don't necessarily have to have expensive laptops or handheld devices or anything like that for diagnostic tools. And the diagnostic tools are becoming more sophisticated nowadays. They have it where it can automatically connect with your phone. So you don't need a separate laptop or a handheld device. They'll have it connect Bluetooth with your phone through an app. That's pretty cool. But as a new owner operator, I would not go out there and spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on diagnostic software. You don't need it anymore. And the old trucks, you needed it. Now, I will say that as you develop as an owner operator and your technical and mechanical skills improve, you're going to want to buy more tools. You want to do more of the entry level maintenance on your truck yourself. Maybe some APU maintenance, so you're going to buy some more tools. So over the course of 5 years, your tool collection may grow. And then a lot of guys take pride in their tool collection. This is their hobby. And it's like, oh, I got that tool. That's a great tool. And then they'll recommend tools to their buddies. So it's like guys buy boats, they buy motorcycles, they go on expensive vacations, and then other guys buy tools. And all I say is talk to a lot of other owner operators, see what tools they have, talk to mechanics, see what tools they have. You learn from experience from your own equipment, what tools you need to carry. But just start out with basic, the minimum stuff. Don't go crazy on that. Over years, you can build your collection. Sometimes, you know, buying tools is a hobby, and sometimes I'll go to Home Depot and just look at the tools. And I like Klein tools too. Klein tools are good. They make some good hand tools. Um, but sometimes you want to upgrade, because Milwaukee comes out with new and better tools, and it's like, okay, I want to upgrade, so you can upgrade your tools. And then tools are very resellable. You could, if you don't need a tool anymore, you could put it on eBay or Facebook Marketplace and you could sell it. Now, you're not going to get full asking price, but maybe you can get 50%. So it's not a bad investment and it's tax deductible. So if you want to buy the tool, realize that you're probably going to get 20% return on a tax deductible. So it's like, okay, that tool costs $10, but I'm going to save $2 on my taxes by turning in that receipt, to your accountant. So, you could buy tools and get a tax deductible. You can get tools on discount. You can get tools on cheaply from eBay and Facebook Marketplace. Watch out for them sales. And if you're a veteran, you can get 10% discount at Home Depot and Lowe's. Same thing with auto parts places. You can get a veteran's discount. So you want to try to use sales and discounts as much as you possibly can when you're building your tool inventory. But it's with these newer trucks, you just don't need it. It used to be, with the old truck, the Cascade 125, you really need to put more emphasis on developing your mechanical skills. 'Cause you just got tired of dealing with mechanics all the time, and you need to find ways to keep your truck on the road. You'd be broke down on the side of the road all the time. So then you used to have to buy the diagnostic tools and all the special tools and stuff like that, and you just don't need it anymore. In my opinion, you don't need all those tools anymore, especially if you're first. Now, guys who have a mechanical background, like there are mechanics that do buy their own trucks and then become owner operators. They got all the tools. They have all the tools from when they were mechanics. So um, those guys do all their maintenance on their own too. But here's something about doing maintenance that you got to think about. Um, the time you spend on maintenance, you could be spending on other things. There's so many things about being an owner operator that consumes your time. Accounting, for example, taxes. Just getting out and out your exercise. Just getting some time off the road and away from the truck so you can have some R&R, some rest and relaxation. That's good. You got laundry to do. You got to pay all your bills. You got to maintain your home, and you got to spend time with family and all that stuff. So if you are trying to do everything on your own, that's going to be really, really tough as an owner operator. So you got to budget your time. And one of the things is you need to delegate some of these maintenance issues to the mechanics. It's like, okay, I got all kinds of tax stuff I have to do, accounting stuff to do. I don't have time to do my own chassis lube. So let me have Loves do that, and then I'll put a work order and at the terminal, and they'll rotate my tires and do a oil change. Let them do that. But then it would be like, okay, well, air filters are really easy. Cabin air filters are really easy. I don't need to pay somebody to do that. I could do that myself. And you just learn over time, and you just start picking up tools over time. And you just grow your tool collection. And then one day you're going to realize that you buy way too many tools, and then you're going to put them on sale on eBay. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.